Well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for attending. Really appreciate you guys coming out. I just wanted to make sure that I fit the part, since all the marketing material out there seems to allude that all hackers look like this, and that probably couldn't be farther from the truth. So. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity awareness today, but we're also going to talk about, I'm going to share some experiences that we go through literally on a daily and weekly basis. There's lots of, I guess since the government calls this misinformation and disinformation, and we're going to share some of those experiences with you guys. And if you guys, at the end, hopefully if we have a little bit of time, if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those, and we'll kind of go from there. So, one of the big questions that I get asked all the time from new businesses, old businesses, is, what are we going to do to protect ourselves 100%? And the reality is, there is no way that, the other aspect is take away their computers, take it off the internet. End of story. I know that sounds stupid, but that's pretty much your 100% guarantee. And, in this day and age, obviously with, all the things that go on day in, day out, we can certainly give you a laundry list of, all the things that you have to do. You'll probably have to write all this down because there's going to be about 50 things. Just kidding. Sorry, not trying to take over for the comedian, but we'll go through some of the things that, kind of the main things. To be honest with you, a lot of you guys can Google it. You guys are all smart enough. But we're going to tell you about kind of real life experiences, because unfortunately, we've been privy to go through companies that have been hacked. Situations where some are minor, some are major, but the reality is this is happening every day, every week. So, as I said, you don't want to get hacked. Let's just take away all their computers. One of the other aspects is, obviously, for all of us here, in Windsor and Southwestern Ontario, we're all certainly aware of, the recent cybersecurity breach, with the hospitals. As bad as it is and was and continues to be, the reality is this is happening all the time. The only difference is, if you're not big enough, you don't make the news. But don't for a second think that this isn't happening. I can tell you, certainly from our experiences, 80% of the businesses locally that are literally just down the street from you that are getting compromised have probably less than 30 computers. So if you think that for a second that, this is about, oh, well, the hospital was a target or the school boards, are targets. Absolutely, and there are certainly different types of, security breaches and targeted attacks that are going after you guys. But in a lot of, we'll call it regular, small, medium-sized businesses, we couldn't even survive targeted attacks. Probably 90% of the businesses, if they were attacked, from North Korea, China, some of these professional organizations, the reality is they would probably have about a 95% success rate. There's all kinds of reasons for that. Some are financial. Some of them, businesses, struggle to invest both with security awareness, investing in the actual technologies, investing in labor, the IT staff that are needed, investing in monitoring systems. There's so many things that you have to do in order to, ensure that your environments are secure. But the one common denominator is it only takes one person of your staff that makes the wrong move, that does the wrong dumb thing, and it could be game over. So we'll get into some of those, some of those things. First, obviously we'll talk about, some of the different types of attacks. Certainly, the most popular one that everybody's probably aware of, phishing attacks. These happen every day, every week, every month. For those that aren't familiar with phishing attacks, obviously there's organizations that are out there, these professional hackers, which are literally some of the best software developers in the world. So just so everybody's clear, these aren't Joe Blow's hacker out of their basement. These are professional organizations that are out there to steal from you. And as part of that, phishing attacks certainly, are one of the most prevalent ones. There are ways to certainly protect yourself against those. But at the end of the day, people still fall for them. I can tell you that because there probably isn't a week that goes by that we don't get contacted by lots of our customers saying, is this email okay? Can I click on it? Can I click on this link? The reality is part of that's also in education. But the reality is you only need one person to click. So hopefully, when those things do happen, you've got backup plans where, if they click on that link and it tries to install some malicious software on their computer, that they don't have the security rights to do it. I can once again tell you that that's certainly not always the case. Maybe in places like the school board where you guys have, probably more stringent policies, things like that, those things are going to be in place. But in a lot of the small businesses, everybody wants everybody to have, a field day and be able to install whatever they want. And the reality is, if they can install software on their computers, sure as hell so can the hackers. Obviously, malicious software, kind of speaks for itself. The days of, receiving emails with, nude pictures of Britney Spears, yeah, hopefully, those days are long gone and those things don't happen anymore. But the reality is, it's usually hyperlinks that are, the big equation. Social engineering. So you would think in this day and age that people don't fall for social engineering, but the reality is there are still lots of people that, get contacted by, some of these bad actors. They reach out to them, telling them, oh, we've got a notification, there's a problem with your computer, we're here to help you. And the next thing you know, they're giving up their passwords, their credentials, telling them lots of other information that they probably shouldn't, and basically opening up the front door. Once again, these things actually do happen. Whether they're happening in your organizations or not, we're amazed in our organization because we're the guys that get the calls for these. But the reality is they're still happening. And like I said, it only takes that one person, to do this. Brute force attacks. Obviously, everybody, talks about increasing, the length of their passwords because, we're going to stop the hackers from getting in and we're going to put in a 12-character password or a 14-character password or a 16-character password. But the reality is, once again, these days, with artificial intelligence and everything else, brute force password crackers that you can just download from the dark web, they are so sophisticated that you're probably never going to have a long enough password that won't get compromised. So obviously things like multi-factor authentication, certainly probably today the best way of alienating that from happening. And we can't stress that enough because multi-factor authentication is pretty much your savior, at least in today's technology. Things like credential stuffing. A lot of times people don't really understand or know what credential stuffing is, but certainly I can tell you that I get lots of phone calls asking me, how could somebody have gotten a copy of our invoices? Did we already get hacked? Or how are they able to get into our systems? But the reality is there's lots of other companies that get breached. And when they get breached and you have communications with them, and I'll use examples like Wayfair. Somebody goes on Wayfair, they enter in their credentials, they create their accounts. Wayfair gets compromised. Those 14 million accounts now are sold on the dark web, and they have those users' usernames and passwords. There's a lot of people out there, once again, your users, that tend to use the same login and passwords from site to site to site to site, as well as internal access to applications. And these are all the things that contribute to basically making it easier, for hackers, to get into your systems. Once again, we see this where, because we deal with a lot of customers that also, deal with they're either their competitors or they deal with, their customers. And, a customer will get compromised. They were having communications with another business, and all of a sudden they're wondering, like, well, how did they get a copy of our invoices? Well, this is kind of how. So, certainly credential stuffing is probably another big one. The last couple, zero-day vulnerabilities, IoT, smart devices being exploited, that's way low on the totem pole, especially, in corporate businesses, but certainly those things do happen. I don't care if you're using a Roomba at home or you have, cameras that communicate with, with cloud services. A lot of those IoT devices certainly have vulnerabilities that can be compromised. But, in the grand scheme of things, of what's happening from a business perspective, those are pretty low. Any questions so far? Okay, so let's talk about, how do we, make sure that you guys are prepared? How many businesses here have had to fill out, cyber insurance forms, showing, how much, all the great things that you guys are doing to protect yourselves so that the insurance companies don't have to pay? Well, the reality is, some of the main ones they're going to have on there, and once again, we see now where insurance companies are stopping insurance. They're not actually insuring certain businesses if they don't have certain things in place. So if it hasn't happened to you yet, it's probably going to, because they obviously want to reduce their risks. They're tired of paying out these huge claims, which happen every day, every week, every month. So, multi-factor authentication, I'm sure, the good majority of everybody here, are either using, Office 365 or Google or, the main players, in terms of, email communications, things like Microsoft SharePoint, stuff like that. But the reality is that, Microsoft and Google provide for free, multi-factor authentication. In this day and age, there literally is zero excuse for businesses to not have multi-factor authentication. And one of the biggest things that you have to remember is that you have to stop hackers getting the ability to get on your network. I can tell you with 1,000% security or confirmation that once hackers are on your network, you have minutes. This is from experience. Dushko's sitting at the back, and we've unfortunately been through this with multiple customers. But no matter how secure you think your network is, and certainly we do all of the main things that we recommend to our customers, having things like network segregation, obviously having all of the security tools and stuff in place. But the reality is most of the hackers have way better tools than you do. And once they're on your network, it's a race against time. It's a race against time to stop them in their tracks, if you can even know that it's happening. And that's part of the problem and challenge, in today's cybersecurity landscape. So, as part of that, obviously, multi-factor authentication, I think goes without saying. Everybody should have that implemented. Now we're taking that to not just, free multi-factor authentication for, Office 365 and Google. Now we're looking at things like VPN. Once again, we learned the hard way last year, where we had, a number of customers that basically got compromised in the same way that, that the hospitals did. So whether you guys are aware or not, but, how the hospitals originally got compromised was they had VPN accounts that got compromised. And once that happened, then people are legally on the network. They're logging on just like any other user. And they can poke around, they can try and, sniff password hashes, numerous things in order to try and elevate their security permissions to where then they can do more damage. Another new, technique is obviously enabling, VPN access with, multi-factor authentication. There's certainly numerous solutions out there. We're not here to tell you use this solution or this solution. What we are telling you, though, is that you need to take that just as seriously as you do for, email compromises. Patching. Once again, I can't stress that enough. Part of our business is obviously providing managed services, but that core business really exists to keep customers' environments patched, always keep them up to the latest updates. Obviously we know Microsoft, so maybe not quite the latest updates, but the reality is that if you aren't going to keep your software patched, you wouldn't believe the number of businesses that I go into and still see people running 10 and 20-year-old software. And thinking that there's no vulnerabilities against that stuff. Endpoint protection, intrusion detection. I'm not sure what everybody runs in terms of firewalls, but today firewalls have changed drastically over the last 5 or 10 years. In the old days we had firewalls that literally you either open the ports or you close the ports, and that was your firewall. Today's next generation firewalls are obviously there to provide way more protection, with things like intrusion protection, content filtering, numerous additional advanced security services that provide to be able to block those things before they're even hitting your environment. And once again, the more you can do to try and stop those things from either hitting your end users or your network, certainly the better off you're going to be. Email filtering. Give me an idea. How many people are using Office 365 versus Google? So obviously, good percentage. As you are all probably well aware, Microsoft has, I don't know, about 52 different versions of Office 365. And depending on how much you want to spend with them will depend whether or not they're actually going to give you some of those security tools or not give you those security tools. The reality is, in business, majority of customers are running, Office 365 Business Standard. The reality is that, the mail filtering capability of that really isn't that good. But if you want to go to E5 and pay 4 times as much, they have a much, much better product. So, why have mail filtering if, this stuff is kind of included? Well, the reality is there's good ones and there's bad ones. But the less things that you can have that actually hit your customer environments to your users where they don't see those bad emails that have those malicious hyperlinks, once again, I can tell you that improves your security posture probably by 50%. Just that. Because once again, we all know that majority of compromises still come in today via email. So, you'll notice that the main focus on, cybersecurity is that kind of front end, the access to your network, whether that be through firewall or whether that be through VPN. The second access, obviously, through, either remote access or, through email. Those are the target points because those are that kind of initiator of how they're getting in your environment. So the more things that you can put in place to reduce those and restrict those and block those, certainly the better off you're going to be, for a lot of your end users. CFOs and we'll call it non-technical people, and a lot of them, the first answer out of their mouth is, well, we have antivirus, we're protected. I think looking at the room and knowing a number of people here, I think we all know that endpoint protection, if that's what you're hanging your hat on, you'll probably really be disappointed because it's not going to be your savior. Once again, I get that all the time, Is there one thing that we can buy or that we can invest in that's going to protect my environment? And once again, we all know security is about gates, having as many locks as you can put in place to make it difficult for the hackers for them to get in and to access your stuff. And, once again, this day and age, your first focus is always going to be external. Certainly internally, not giving people local admin rights, not allowing people, I'm be honest with you, I'm a hard ass when it comes to this stuff. I'm somewhat old school, but in my perfect world, if I'm the IT director, IT manager, or IT admin, I'm going to say I'm going to give you these 6 icons to click on, and that's all you're going to get, because the company owns this property, the company owns this solution. You don't need to install anything. I'm going to give you access to the tools you need. But unfortunately, in today's businesses, that's not the case. But, when you open those things up and, well, this user just needs to, be able to keep their systems updated. Well, that's why you have IT people. But, in smaller businesses, that's a little more difficult. They don't want to pay to either outsource it or they don't want to pay to have internal IT people, that's going to be part of their job. They want everybody to be able to be completely in control of their security. So they're going to run their Windows updates. They're going to keep their third-party applications updated. I don't know about you guys. I haven't seen that work once. So, I can't stress enough of, having those other controls in place. I could go on and on and on talking about, all the things you need to do in Active Directory and, certainly, if you want to go and get pen testing and vulnerability scans and all those kinds of things. Those are all part of the bigger picture, in terms of cybersecurity. And they all should be done, but it is certainly the balance between budget and risk. Actually, I was talking to one person, earlier today, and, one of the challenges, of course, is that, they look at it and go, well, but is all this cybersecurity stuff, is it really just like another insurance? And at the end of the day, yeah, somewhat, except I can tell you, if you get compromised, you call us, I can tell you our starting cost for remediation starts at about $100,000. So, pay me now, pay me later. At the end of the day, you have to do absolutely everything you can that this never happens in your environment. And, I can tell you because I've sat in meetings, with business owners and executive directors and managers. It sucks seeing people cry when their environment literally goes up in flames. And the reality is today, there's a lot of businesses that wouldn't even survive if they were fully compromised. There's other, obviously, things, I only have 30 minutes today, but, we could talk about things like, offsite backups and disaster recovery plans. Most businesses, we're not even close to that stuff yet. They're all part of the strategy. They all should be done. But there's lots of businesses out there that, say, oh, well, yeah, I have a backup. Oh, when's the last time you tested it? These are the things that, if I can give you kind of one bit of advice in terms of taking this seriously and really understanding, the reality is most companies, if they haven't gone through a compromise, they have no idea what to expect. I'll give you a little story that literally just happened last week. So we had a customer contact us and say, we think we've been hacked. We think our email has been hacked. The reality was that they actually hadn't. We were able to very quickly determine that it wasn't them. It was somebody that sent them an email that looked like their domain name. And the reality was, so they allowed us to work with their customer, and we went in and found, sure enough, that company's email account had been hacked. So the first recommendation that we made was, you need to contact the RCMP. So this happened last Friday. I'm not sure how many of you guys read the news, but, well, looks like there's a bit of a cybersecurity incident with the RCMP. The RCMP didn't answer their phones on Friday. They didn't answer their phones on Thursday. And finally, when the customer was able to actually get through to the RCMP to report the cybersecurity incident, they told them, well, you know what? Yeah, the local RCMP, yeah, we don't handle that. You have to go through the local police. Wouldn't we think that's just a little strange that the Windsor Police Department is now going to be the cybersecurity experts, in town versus the federal RCMP? Absolutely bizarre. But, by law, we're supposed to contact the RCMP. We're supposed to contact, the authorities to report these incidents, and then our second phone call is going to be to the cyber insurance company. And then they're going to go through their process. And the reality is, once again, unless you've been through these and not knowing what actually happens, I can tell you that, we had a customer that, literally got completely compromised. They weren't even a customer of ours. They actually became a customer. And, after they contacted the cyber insurance company, the cyber insurance company invoked their team that they partner with. And the reality was that for the next 3 to 4 weeks, they were doing their forensic investigation. During that time, nobody in the company could touch a computer, could touch a server. Everything was completely shut down. Once again, how many of us here could survive shutting your business down for about a month? That's just the investigation piece. The remediation took another 6 months. Once again, a lot of small businesses, they don't know what to expect, but this is the process. These are the things that really happen day in, day out. And when you follow that process, it's painful. And so, these are the things that, we have to get, our bosses and our managers and our owners to take a lot more serious, because they don't understand the process of what you will go through. Once again, all we have to do is, read the press on what happened with, with the hospitals, and sounds like they're still months out. And it's not like they were small. It's not like Transform, who was their managed service provider, was small. But, when something that, like this happens, it's absolutely devastating. The last thing really is, network monitoring. How many people have heard of, that know what a SIM is? Anybody? Show of hands? A couple of people? 3, 4? So, once again, I mentioned earlier that, once hackers are on your network, you literally have minutes. And on flat networks, it pretty much is minutes. So as part of that, you absolutely have to know when this stuff's happening. Today's obviously, endpoint protection. Now you see cyber insurance companies are saying, well, you have to also have EDR. Well, what's the difference between endpoint protection and EDR? One is signature-based, one is AI-based. But at the end of the day, you need to know when somebody's on your environment. You need to know when those, external IPs are there. And you need to act, really quickly. So certainly having strong, and when we talk about network monitoring, I don't just talk about network monitoring from, what's up, what's down, or monitoring via SNMP. Yes, those are all important aspects of your, regular lives, in terms of managing the network. But I'm also talking about traffic, network traffic, knowing what's actually going on. Why is this one computer talking to 50 or 60, other different websites? How do you determine whether there's command and control? Those are, some of the other aspects of it that people do not invest enough, in that monitoring space. But the reality is, those are the tools. If you're going to invest in dollars and tools, those are the things that you really have to have in place so that when something happens. We had a situation where literally, it happened at probably 9:30 at night. We were able to, not only get notified, but be able to intervene within 9 minutes. That's literally the only thing that saved, a company from fully being, compromised. Those are real-time things that, if you've got those things in place, that eventually becomes kind of your saving grace, down the road. It's a lot easier to restore a few servers than to restore an entire environment. And even today, people don't think, about, oh, well, I've only got 50 computers. Yeah, we'll just reformat them and reinstall everything. Well, how long does it take you guys to do that? 2 hours a machine, 4 hours a machine, maybe more. These are the realities of, when you look at, that whole cybersecurity landscape is what's our fallback? What's our recovery? What's our plan? How many companies even know, oh God, we don't even have the license keys for all these machines? These are real-time facts. This is what literally you go through day in, day out. And if it ever happens to you, and which it is literally a matter of time, that's really going to be, your keys. Just really a little bit about Netmon for those of you guys that don't know us. We are a managed service provider. However, we actually have 3 divisions in our company. So one is actually what the company was originally founded on, which is actually our network monitoring product. We compete with, the biggest of the big, so we compete with SolarWinds and, some of the other network monitoring products out there. some of the things that we do have in place. We're now coming out with intrusion detection, even our monitoring system. Once again, just kind of another layer, but big focuses. Got a list of our leadership team here. Pretty much most of them are here today, and want to thank them for coming out and supporting this event. Just some free press for some of our techs and some of our guys on staff. I touched on our network monitoring product. We're more than happy, anybody that is interested, if you guys do or don't have products like this in place. I can tell you we actually use our Netmon product in every single customer that we manage, and we're close to 100 customers that are using this product.